Um, I think we left off at like 57,000, right? Yeah, 57,000. I did about 10,000 damage yesterday. And that was by no means ideal circumstances. We only did 2 streams, and the first stream was largely spent dealing with the eyes on the hands. So hopefully we can get quite a lot of the top eye done today, potentially 15 or 20,000 damage. Hey, Chris. Although tonight I do have plans to eat with my grandparents, so I may not be able to stream quite as long as I'd like to. Unfortunately, I have quite a lot going on this weekend, and as a result, hey Flumbus, might not be able to put in quite as much progress as I'd like to. Hey Nappa. You're just watching one of the vids? Nice. Which one? Yeah, bare minimum, I want to do 10,000 damage today. But I think we can get done a lot more than that. So, weird question. Do you guys ever just, like... Okay, so you know, like, deli chicken, right? Like, you get, like, sliced chicken at the deli to, like, put on, like, sandwiches or whatnot. You ever just, like, take that out of the bag and eat it? Like, not put it on a sandwich or anything. Just get deli chicken with the express intention of just eating it on its own as a snack. I have a hard time not doing that. God, I love chicken. Alright, we reached the, So, the crash must not have been related to the projectile cap. No? You're missing out. Like, you had a fresh deli chicken from the grocery store. You know, I usually get, like teriyaki chicken or something. It's sliced for, like, sandwiches, and then you just grab it and you eat it. You just shove it in your mouth. But you do that at like 2 a.m. Believe it or not, you can order a lot of stuff at that time here in Georgia, so you just order something if you're still up. Huh. That's surprising. Here in the US, you usually can't really get deliveries past, like, 10, 11 p.m. One day you went to my stream and it seemed to you that your speech was pre-recorded? What? Which stream was it? The only time that might have happened is, like, if I was watching an old video on stream. Like, there were a couple times that I watched old streams or old videos, like, with another window open on stream. Might have been something like that. Kittens are very fun. Yeah. I'd see you. Google Translate definitely sucks. Are you running the things you're saying through Translate? Okay. OBS just randomly disconnected for some reason. No idea why. I guess I'll lower the stream quality and see if that helps. Okay. Well, maybe that'll help out. I don't like it when OBS does that. It's not like dropping frames. There's nothing that, like, goes wrong. It just, for some reason, stops. And then picks up, like, a second later. Hey, Mossy. How am I doing? I'm doing alright. Got plenty of sleep. Not entirely looking forward to having to spend my night having dinner with my grandparents instead of working on this, but like I said yesterday, if you weren't here, the pace for dealing damage to the top eye, as you can hopefully tell, is considerably higher than the pace we were dealing damage to the hands. And so as a result, we're blowing through the top eye's HP much faster than we would the hand's HP. You know, just today alone, in the like 10 minutes or so I've been doing this, we've already done about 500 damage. Yeah. It's both faster and the top eye has less damage, or less HP than the hands. You know, the hands have about like 75,000. The top eye only has like 67,000. So by virtue of that, in front of the hand for the short window to cause damage, yeah. Whereas we have a much longer window with the eye, because it actually stays still. And it'll be even better when we get to the core, because the core never closes. You know, the top eye spends 5 or 6 seconds each cycle closed where I can't deal damage to it, and it also does the death ray attack where I can't really deal damage to it. But when we get down to the core, that problem shouldn't exist. So I think probably sometime in the middle of next week we'll be done with this. I don't think it'll take more than a couple days for the core. It is unfortunate. It seems to me, based on what I've heard from other people and just from what I would assume, that it's not possible to do multiplayer with the downpour slug cats on console. That is, on PC, if you add in a file to the Rainworld directory, or Rainworld folder, I don't know why I said directory, in a particular spot with a particular name, you can enable doing multiplayer with the downpour slug cats, meaning they're campaigns. Like, you can do multiplayer Gourmand campaign, Saint campaign, Rivulet campaign, whatever. But you can't do that on console, as far as I can tell. You can still play as the Downpour Slug Cats in the Survivor, Hunter, and Monk campaigns, but you can't do their campaigns in multiplayer. You should be able to do multiplayer expedition mode, though, with those Slug Cats. And yeah, could a mod fix the multiplayer problem on console? It's not possible. I don't know how you would mod console Rainworld. Does console Rainworld have access to mods? I don't have console Rainworld, but I would have assumed that wasn't the case. Complicated is not a mod. Well, I don't know, because I don't have console Rainworld, nor am I familiar with what you're suggesting. So I don't have an answer there. I believe the multiplayer Downpour Slug Cats campaigns was something that was developed but not implemented because it was unstable. And by adding a file into your Rainworld folder with a particular name, you can re-enable it to be played. I don't know how you would do that on a console, or if it would be possible. Definitely, maybe in the future they could re-add the file. I mean, they haven't done it on PCs, so... Like, I think it just wasn't stable enough to add, which is why it's not added. If they haven't done it on PC, I don't know why they do it on console. From what I remember, the game crashing was much more common with those campaigns as opposed to the base game ones. How was the dinner last night? It was fine. I just had a sandwich. I'm excited at the prospect of being done with the Moonlord soon. Obviously not like soon, but I'm pretty sure the bulk of the time we need to spend on this fight has been spent. And we're over halfway there. Yeah, that's 1,000 damage for the day. Make sure the challenge be boring or something? I mean, yeah. Do you see what I'm doing? I don't... Does this look exciting? I don't... It's proof of concept. But, like, yeah, this is boring. I'm doing it to finish beating the whole game with a lawnmower, and as proof of concept, and because I can, not because it's particularly fun or interesting. I'm sitting here spamming the right click button like 30 times repeatedly, and then doing that for hours on loop. Patience 100. Hey, plant. I'm also excited at the prospect of being done with this, because once I'm done with this, I can do something else. Like right now, I can't really use my computer, for very much of anything. I can't play other games. I can't really edit stuff very effectively. I don't want to do anything that might potentially cause the game to crash. I don't want to run, intensive programs and whatnot. Don't know why, but you're not bored. It's the most fascinating thing for you. You cannot fully understand why. Not the challenge itself, but the almost endless human capabilities. Well, like I said before, this is the last time I'm going to do something like this. I don't really have much interest in doing another low damage run or something that would, take hours killing the Moonlord like this again after this. The reasons for which, not the least of which is, the fact that each time that I've done these low damage challenges, they haven't just been low damage challenges. They've had, some other, unless you consider it insane. That's not what insanity is. The definition of insanity is not doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. That's just a good quote. But each of these things has had a different interesting point to have to deal with. Like flare gun, wooden bow, those are like your baseline. Copper short sword is different from those in the fact that it's a very low damage weapon, and as a result, requires you to have to fight the Moonlord in a very different way. And similarly, the Lawnmower, also being a very low range weapon, but has very specific restrictions that require this teleporting. Lawnmower requires this teleporting because it can't be used if you're not standing on the ground. You can't fly in the air to hit things. If that wasn't clear. Okay, 55555. I keep getting messages on Discord. I'm gonna check those in a sec. Sure it's nothing important. Alright. 1,500 damage down. We might have worked our way up to a 3,000 damage pace. 3,000 per hour. Which is nice. Cuts down the time even more. What if someone ended up doing the same challenge that I've done? How would I think or feel about it? I wouldn't care. How long have I been doing this? At this point, probably like 60 hours. I mean, I would be surprised that somebody would see me do something and then also choose to do it themselves in some of these cases. Like, I don't know why you would watch me do this and then go, you know what? I'm going to beat the game with a lawnmower. That seems like a fun thing to do. I'm going to choose to do that after watching this. But, like, I don't care if somebody else does what I've done before. Not, like, claiming exclusive rights over particular challenges or anything. Like, when I did Hardcore Legendary Get Fixed Boy, and then, like, Hobu did it the day after, my, response wasn't like, damn it, I wanted to be the only person that did that. It was just like, oh, cool, good for him. Patience is insane. Well, it hasn't been 60 hours consecutively. I've been taking breaks, but I've only been doing maybe somewhere, usually in the ballpark of 2 to 4 hours at a time. 2 on the low end, 4 on the high, probably averaging around 3-hour bunches. So these are 60 or 16? 60. I mean, you can do the math based on how much damage we've been dealing an hour. 16 doesn't really make sense. If we're only dealing, 1,000 to 1,700 damage an hour against the hands and like 3,000 against the top eye, uh, 16 hours, we would be nowhere near where we are now. And I would say, give or take 5 hours from any estimate that I give. Because, like, I'm not keeping count. I'm just, like, roughly guessing. Because we were at 50, like, a day or two ago. And I probably streamed, about 10 hours since then. Lawnmower has a fixed use time? Yes. Also, attack speed would not affect it anyway, as I've said before, because the Lawnmower is not a melee weapon. The Lawnmower does not benefit from anything that would affect melee weapons, and melee weapons are the only weapons that can get global attack speed modifiers. It's not like you can get an attack speed modifier for a gun, aside from reforging it, which you can't reforge the Lawnmower. So even if its use time wasn't fixed, there'd be no way to increase it. Because it's not a melee weapon. I'm only Moonlord part 345. Nah, we'll probably be like 35, 40 parts. Maybe 50 at a stretch. But we're dealing pretty good damage to the top iron core. Well, I assume we'll deal good damage to the core because we're dealing good damage to the top eye. It's possible that could be inaccurate, which would make things a little bit awkward. I plan to, when the core comes, set up a second teleporter system, much like this one, on the right teleporter. So I can just switch between them every 5 seconds. And I should, hopefully, be able to just sit still here and tank the True Eyes of Cthulhu. Hopefully. If not, I don't know what to do. Can people please stop asking you to do Calamity with a copper short sword? No, people are incredibly unoriginal and think that they're funny. I usually just tell people off for using the same rehashed joke for the past decade, and that they're completely unoriginal and haven't been funny in a very long time. Or just tell people to do it themselves with a copper short sword. Stop bugging me about it. Because the answer is no. Because that's the problem. People, its use time is determined by frames in a fixed timer. I don't know. I haven't looked at the Lawnmower's code. If it doesn't have a timer, maybe increasing FPS. I don't want to increase FPS. Increasing FPS breaks the game. I don't want to do that. It really fucks up projectiles and a lot of, like, random things. Because, like, so many things in the game are tied to the tick rate, and the tick rate being the same as the FPS is kind of required for things to run smoothly. If you mess with that, then the game can really break in a lot of weird ways, and I do not want to do that in the middle of fighting the Moonlord for 60 hours. She got to 5 pebbles? Nice. What happened? Yeah, no. The problem is, Time Death, is that people think that they're being funny and original by saying, like, do it with X or whatever. What they fail to realize is that they are the, like, dozenth, hundredth, potentially sometimes even, like, thousandth person to just repeat the exact same sentiment mindlessly over and over again. And no, you're not original, you're not funny, you're annoying. Stop. after I do this, I'm probably going to ban, like, people just saying do it with X because it's incredibly annoying and unoriginal. My God, just shut up. Please. Stop. It's not fun having, like, comment sections and chats, flooded with people making the same repetitive, unfunny joke. Messing with FPS could be considered valid. I don't... Why are you asking me? I'm not gonna do it. I wouldn't, like, even consider doing it. It certainly wouldn't be valid in, like, speedrunning categories. Think you're gonna allow Cursed Flames? Are you going to do it? Don't do it. Also use Venom, not Cursed Flames. But, Calamity's design is really not oriented for being done with low damage. I'm not even sure you'd get past the Wall of Flesh in Calamity with its buffs. At least if you... Well, I guess you'd have to do it on Classic. Probably. But, like, I mean, if you use dots, it'd probably be, like, more manageable. But, like, a lot of Calamity's bosses just are not designed to be fought with that low range. And, I don't really see any reason to give in and do that. I mean, ultimately, it's up to you, but I would never even consider doing Calamity with a low damage weapon just because of how that mod is designed. I think it would be incredibly miserable. Because I'm gonna let you know, Time Death. Even if you do it with a copper short sword, that will not stop people from saying, now do it with X. You do it with a copper short sword, they're gonna say do it with a lawnmower. They're gonna say do it with a copper short sword without imbuing flasks. Like, it's never going to stop. It's just going to get more and more repetitive and annoying over time. And if you do it, honestly, it kind of encourages people to just keep spamming it over and over again, because you've demonstrated that maybe you'll do it if they suggest something. Yeah. If you wanted to do something in Calamity with a copper short sword, I would suggest you just pick a single boss to fight with a copper short sword. As opposed to doing, like, the whole game with it. Ultimately, it is up to you, but like, the sheer amount of content and, like, the balancing stuff in Calamity, it'd just be such a mess. Like, if you wanted to beat Calamity with a copper short sword, you could just, like, fight one of the late game bosses with a copper short sword, which would skip hundreds, probably, like, potentially thousands of hours of stuff in the meantime to essentially achieve the same result. Like, if you just want to, like, say you've accomplished something like beating some difficult Calamity boss with a copper short sword, I don't know, Providence, Yaron, Supreme Calamitous, Exomex. If you're beating Calamity mod, you'd have to do those anyway. So you could just pick one individually to fight and kill. Which would save you a lot of time and stress. And still have the result of you saying that you've killed a difficult Calamity boss with a copper short sword. I'm not even sure you could do the Exomex with a copper short sword. I don't know how you would hit Skeletron, because his position is locked above you. Even if you teleport, I think he just instantly readjusts. I'm not sure you could hit him. Maybe there's like a frame or two where you could set up a teleporter. And it's a similar thing, like Supreme Calamitous would probably be really difficult to hit because of how she locks her position. Relative to you. And they're by no means the only bosses with those issues. I think a lot of Calamity's worm bosses might also be immune to... I don't know how dots work in Calamity, how many bosses are immune to debuffs. If they follow Destroyer logic of making worms really resistant or immune to debuffs, then even with Cursed Flames, it'd probably be really annoying. Because of the frequency of worm bosses. Yeah, just because some random commenter said, do it with a copper short sword, does not mean you have to do it with a copper short sword. You can just be like, nah, fuck off. That doesn't sound fun. What you certainly don't want to do is begin doing a challenge that is really difficult, like, you know, copper short sword only Calamity or something, and then get burnt out in the middle of it. It's really easy to get burnt out on Calamity, given how long it is and tedious it is with something like that. Because then you're just going to feel like shit for not accomplishing anything and for giving up. The one bright side about Calamity, like I said, is Calamity does have a lot of damage over time effects, which, if you were to allow those, I think could make it considerably more bearable if you could apply them to the copper short sword. But even still, when you're cutting through a boss that is 2 million HP, that kills you in like 2 to 3 hits, is not going to be a fun time. Yeah, if you want to do any challenge, be sure it's for yourself and not peer pressure. That's good advice. And don't get me wrong, even if you were to allow flasks and damage over time effects, it would still be very impressive beating Calamity with a copper short sword, but it's not a decision I would make lightly, especially if you're going to commit heavily to it. And like I said, I'd suggest starting with just one boss and then seeing how you feel after that, if you're considering doing the whole thing. For a good comparison, before I did, you know, Flare Gun only, Copper Short Sword only, Lawnmower only, I had already fought, like, the 3 hardest bosses in the game with various low damage weapons. Moonlord with a wooden bow, Empress of Light with a flare gun, Duke Fish on the paper airplanes. To scope out the feel for things. And then I did flare gun only to, like, scope out how that felt. And then, like, years later, I decided I wanted to do copper short sword only. And I did a bit of testing beforehand, made sure bosses were able to be hit and killed. I think Wall of Flesh was a big one. Making sure that was possible. An unbelievably long time. Don't underrate the value of damage over time effects. If you were to do pure copper short sword only, it would take an unbelievably long time. I could not imagine anybody doing that. However, Calamity does have a lot of decently strong dots. If you could sustainably live and apply those damage over time effects, it might not be as bad as it seems. Because, you know, the difference between vanilla and... Like, if you're taking vanilla, if you use damage over time effects, just a Venom Flask on the Moonlord, it takes, like 4 or 5 hours, I think. Maybe, like, 6 or 7 on a high difficulty. If you're doing it without Venom Flasks, it takes, like, 30-something hours. And Calamity has a lot more potent damage over time effects than just Venom. Assuming they're able to be applied through, like, armor sets or accessories. I'm not positive on that one. So you could probably get pretty decent, like, baseline damage, by virtue of that, assuming things were not immune to debuffs. But then the number scaling in Calamity gets really off the rails. And also, Calamity is just really, really long. Like, base game Terraria is a pretty long game, all things considered. You know, your average casual playthrough is going to be taken, for most people, upwards of, like, 20 to 30 hours, I'd say. Some people have playthroughs that last, like, 60 or 70 hours. And, you know, experienced players might be doing a whole playthrough playing, you know, leisurely at, like, 10, 15 hours. If you're going fast, maybe, like, 5 or 6. If you're speedrunning, a couple hours. But, like, it's a pretty long game. And then Calamity makes it, like, twice as long? Maybe even, like, more than twice as long? You have to build all the arenas for things. Which is not a small investment, given how many things there are in Calamity. There's so many different regions. You know, you wouldn't have to do all bosses, I suppose. It'd probably be way too tedious trying to do all bosses in Calamity, but... Calamity just adds so much stuff. Killing boss with a Venom Flask and a copper short sword. I mean, like I said, Sharktails, with challenges like these, you decide the rules for yourself. There's not some copper short sword panel of judges that are going to determine whether or not your run is valid. If you personally feel like it's cheating to use a flask, then if you were to do it, you would use a flask. But I'm not going to tell somebody their run is invalid because they use some damage over time effect or frost armor or something like that. Because ultimately that decision's on them. And even with that, it's still a really difficult challenge. I'm just going to use that to, like, casually stroke my ego. Because I didn't do that. But yeah, especially if you're doing something like Calamity Mod, where it's just, like, obscenely long. I couldn't imagine doing that without some additional, damage source. It's a similar reason that I said, like, if I was going to do paper airplanes, I would use frost armor, just to make hard mode less annoying. maybe you don't understand Calamity well enough. Good comparison. The Moonlord has, on expert mode, 217,500 HP. It takes 30-something hours to kill the Moonlord with a copper short sword in pretty reasonable circumstances, and that's with bypassing his defense on the hands using an Ichor Flask and Sharpening Station. If you didn't have that, it would probably take like 40 or 50 hours. Supreme Calamitous, one of, Calamity's main, big endgame bosses, has like 2 million HP, about 10 times as much as the Moonlord. She's also way more difficult to hit. You wouldn't be able to hit her consistently. It would take, hundreds of hours, probably upwards of like 500-600 hours, maybe even 1,000 hours, depending on how consistently you could hit her. And that's assuming you don't die. She does truckloads of damage and kills you in like 2 or 3 hits. If it's not feasible to do it in a purist sense, then there's nothing wrong with bending the rules and finding a way where it is feasible to do it. If you would say, okay, it would be, completely implausible to kill Supreme Calamitous with a copper short sword, but if you applied a bunch of damage over time effects and you got, 100, 200 DPS, maybe that would be plausible. Maybe you could do that. It's a similar thing to, like, as an example of something that I've done. With accessories only. Wait, no, not accessories only. With Copper Short Sword only and Flare Gun, I played on Journey mode and I paused time for the mech bosses, because otherwise it just wouldn't be possible. Does that make the run invalid by using some Journey mode powers? I've certainly heard some people say that it does. It's a sentiment that I've heard expressed. I don't think it does. By the rules that I've defined, it's perfectly fine, but other people, if they made their own run, might make different rules. Right now, I'm not using Journey mode to power. If you play Don't Starve Together, it's like beating Misery Toadstool with punches only. I've never even, fought Misery Toadstool. I'm not even sure that is honestly an accurate comparison. The number scaling in Don't Starve Together, there are not very many games that have number scaling to the same extreme that Terraria does. Okay, another good example would be when I did Bouncy Dynamite only. I played on Journey mode and I researched Bouncy Dynamite to give me an infinite supply of it. I certainly heard expressed by some people that made the run illegitimate because it wasn't a purist run. I didn't get the Bouncy Dynamite naturally, or whatever. But I would consider it to be fine. I don't have any issues with getting infinite Bouncy Dynamite for the sake of plausibility there. Or, for accessories only, I gave myself a Shield of Cthulhu to start with, for the sake of just having fun, because otherwise you just have to, cheese Deerclops, with, NPCs or, traps or something like that, and that would just be uninteresting. Does that cause some people to think the run might be less legitimate than others? Sure. Do I care what those people think? No. Unless you're doing something that has a defined rule set, you're really able to tweak the rules to whatever makes the game more fun or interesting for you. At the end of the day, Take 1,000 to 5,000 hours because mushroom. Oh, Toadstool heals. I didn't know that Misery Toadstool heals. That changed things a lot. Yeah, at the end of the day, you should be doing the challenge because it's either fun or interesting or something that you want to do, or that you would feel satisfied doing in a way that's not unbearable, and torturous. And if that means, you know, using a flask with a low damage weapon, or playing on Journey mode, and adjusting time or difficulty, or using like late game armor instead of things you would get before the boss, like that's perfectly fine. Like, if I had chosen to fight the Moonlord on the surface, we would have been done with the fight by now, almost certainly. I have very few doubts about that. Given the frequency of falling stars on the surface, I think he would have been hit by enough to have killed him by this point. Because this is Don't Dig Up. There are falling stars falling all the time. Constantly. You know, we had like 2 or 3 falling stars hit the lunatic cultist, and the lunatic cultist had like 2 seconds in his attack cycle where he was even able to be hit by falling stars. And that was only over the course of like, what, like an 8 or 10 hour fight? The Moonlord being way more vulnerable with 3 hitboxes open to the air a lot of the time. Like, I think those falling stars would have done a huge number on his HP. But I intentionally didn't do that. I intentionally went underground to avoid them. I'll have a sandwich for lunch, I think. If I don't have a sandwich for lunch, I'm probably just going to eat all of the deli meat chicken, not on a sandwich. So I should make a sandwich before I just eat all of the chicken. The falling stars don't take up insta-kill like the Zenith Seed? Yes. However, I would not be vulnerable to getting hit by falling stars, because I'm in an enclosed space. They wouldn't be able to hit me. And I would probably put, like, an extra block of protection to make sure that they wouldn't hit me. Next challenge people will ask after hearing this is killing all bosses with falling stars. I have heard that dozens of times, Mossy. And I'm not going to do it for the same reason that I don't plan to do NPC damage only, which is that it's a completely non-interactive challenge. You don't do anything. You sit there and hope that falling stars hit bosses and die, and that's it. You just find some setup where you can survive indefinitely and then just wait for the boss to die. It would be not fun to play and even more miserable to stream because you're just sitting there doing nothing. Not to mention the fact that Wall of Flesh would be Very annoying to try to kill like that. You'd essentially have to, just, like, destroy the entire world, and then summon the Wall of Flesh, and just hope that the falling stars hit him. Um... Yeah. And, like, I've already blown through most of my, like, things to do, when not actively doing anything in the game over the course of Lawnmower only. Like, reading stories, watching old videos and streams, conversation topics. Like, I can only do this for so long, before I run out of ideas there. Especially because you don't want to potentially get into copyright issues, so there's only so many things I can comfortably do. All I need for a new conversation starter is for Moonlord to clip out of existence. God, that was a pain in the ass. If you weren't here, there was a very annoying bug that would happen with Skeletron and Skeletron Prime, where they would just cease to exist, whenever they would, like, go on top of you. If you have knockback immunity and you're fighting Skeletron and his head is spinning on top of you and you move in a certain way, then the distance between you and the boss is calculated to be 0, and, like, Skeletron's speed calculation is based on his distance from you. And so if his distance from you is 0, his speed calculation bugs out, because it tries to divide by 0 or something, and then Skeletron just blinks out of existence. Prime does the same thing, and those were the only two bosses I noticed it with, but apparently I think it can also happen with Plantera, but I didn't witness that. And holy fuck, that was annoying. What would I do if a True Eye of Cthulhu came out of one of the hands? The exact same thing I'm doing now. I don't know. I'd pop out the other True Eye of Cthulhu, I'd synchronize their cycles, and then I don't really think anything would change. I'm fairly confident I can tank the True Eyes of Cthulhu perfectly fine, but I don't want to... In case it's more difficult to deal damage while the True Eyes of Cthulhu are out, I'm not going to, you know, push to do it sooner than I need to, because it's not going to make it easier, it could potentially make it more difficult. But I don't think it will really change very much at all. True Eyes of Cthulhu are super tankable, with a good amount of defense, as long as you synchronize their attack cycles. So you only get hit. The True Eyes of Cthulhu, when you have this much defense, really only have one attack that deals any significant amount of damage, which is their Phantasmal Spheres attack, these eyeballs. Pretty sure that's their most damaging attack. And what you don't want to have happen is to have all of the True Eyes of Cthulhu doing that attack out of sync, where you get hit by one, and then they shoot another one, and then they shoot another one. If they shoot all of them at the same time, then you can iframe it, and only get hit by one out of the 3. So having 3 True Eyes is basically the same as having 1 True Eye, in that sense. Their Death Ray is completely avoidable, because their Death Ray does not go through blocks, unlike the Moonlord's Death Ray. And then their other attacks don't do very much damage at all. They're going to be hitting for, like, single digit, maybe, like, 20 or 30 at most. And given my HP regen, the heart statues, the shiny stone, and all of my defense, as long as I synchronize their attack cycles, I don't think I'd be at much risk of being hurt by them. I believe they also attack less frequently than these hands do. That is, every 20 seconds, each of the hands shoots out 2 of the Phantasmal Sphere attacks, and I think the True Eye of Cthulhu attack cycle roughly mimics them, where each True Eye will shoot 2 Phantasmal Sphere circles every 20 seconds or so. But if their attack cycles are all synchronized, then they're going to line up and it'll be like only one is being shot at me. I could be completely wrong on all of this. I haven't really tested it. But I'm not terribly concerned about True Eyes. We're going to do it live and find out. What's my take on the current possible economic crisis and the warm-up to the Third World War? That's a downer. Way to change to a fun topic. I don't really have very many thoughts on it. Nor is that something that I'm particularly keen to discuss. That just sounds depressing. I don't think this stream needs a creeping sense of existential dread. I got plenty of that at Walmart. Okay, it's been what, like an hour, 10 minutes? We've done... Yeah, I think 3,000 damage an hour is about the pace we're working with. I think the eye will probably... The top eye will probably have moved on to the core on Monday, I think is probably the pace. Yo, Sheer Ice Torrent. I love the... Just recognizing the build-up to Sheer Ice Torrent, because I love this song. Much better than the hands? Yeah. I mean, I was saying it repeatedly when we were fighting the hands, and I guess a lot of people just didn't believe me. The hands were the worst part of the fight. Which is atypical, because usually the hands are, like, the easiest part of the Moonlord fight. They have, you know, the least HP individually. Their attacks are not particularly threatening. They have the least defense. You know, Copper Shortsword, we dealt more than 1 damage a hit to the hands because we could penetrate the defense with an Ichor Flask and Sharpening Station. The leg theme goes kind of hard. A lot of Rainworld's themes go hard. But yeah, specifically, 5 Pebbles said to head west to get to the Farmways. Or past the Farmways, rather. If you missed that part. But what does he know? He's just some, like, computer in a skirt. There's no food in this chamber, just randomly colored orbs. The food is stored in the balls. My opinion on Starbound? Never played Starbound. Never really had much interest in it. I did play that. So, you know, blast from the past. Back in like 2013, 2014, something around there. There was this Terraria-inspired game, space-themed game that was not Starbound. It was called Edge of Space. And this is the game that the SDMG references in Terraria. That's why it says it came from the Edge of Space. And I played that game back when it was in, like, beta, early access, or whatever. That game sucked. I, like, annoyed the developers because I submitted too many bug reports, and they, like, sent me back an email saying, like, stop submitting so many, bug reports. It's still around? It's stopped being developed. Like, isn't the game just, like, abandonware at this point? Like, hasn't it, like... The devs just never finished it and then just, like, went silent? I thought that's what I remember. Because of the bugs? Yeah. But yeah. There are only... You know what Terraria has on the, when you launch the window, it has, like, the messages that pop up as, like, the name of the window. And some of those messages, are things like, also try Minecraft. Also try Breath of the Wild. Like, shouting out other games. There are only 2 games that Terraria has put, as, like, the also try this game, and then removed in a later update. One of them is Edge of Space. They removed, after a while. I think they replaced it with Breath of the Wild. And the other one, does anyone else know what the other one is? This is one of the more interesting ones, I think. Interesting tidbit. No, not Outer Worlds. This was added and then removed in the next update. I think it was only in the game for maybe, like, a couple weeks or months. Yeah, it was Dungeon Defenders 2. It was added in, like, the Old One's Army crossover update and then removed in the next update. I think because, like, the Dungeon Developer 2, like, devs were, like, jackasses or something. Or the publisher or something like that. And, like, didn't pay their employees well. Starbound, there are also some bad practices related to exploitation, unpaid labor, child labor, and some other stuff. What? What? How are you getting child labor to develop your video game? I don't even... I'm struggling to understand how that would even, like, play out. I wouldn't understand half of it. It's mostly digital. Well, I mean, you can get kids to, like, playtest, I guess. I could see something like that, but on, like, the coding end or spriting end, maybe spriting, if you got, like, underage, you know, like, 13, 14, 15-year-old people who are decent at artwork to try to do like spriting work. Basically, ask kids to do some sprites and powder the animation. Got it. With the promise to maybe get a job. Then after the work is done, kick them out. Yeah, pretty scummy thing. Yeah, no, I never really had much interest in any of the Terraria inspired games like those. Insane once you had an argument about toast. You have a few artist friends who would jump at that. I think Celeste is bad. What is Celeste? I've never heard of that before. Look at some Roblox where devs. That's not pleasant. Do we have to look at it? Can we just, like, look somewhere else where we're not talking about, like, sexually exploiting and grooming minors? I don't... It's not a competition. I started playing Terraria in, I think Christmas, either 2012 or 2013. Whatever the second Christmas update one, the one that added Frost Moon. That's around when I started playing. It was like 1.2.2 or something. Yeah, I remember Edge of Space. I had gotten it with my friend to play because he had noticed it on the Steam store. He was like, "Yo, this game's like Terraria, but in space." And I'm like, "Real shit, let's get it." And then we tried it and we were like, "Wow, this game fucking sucks." Not only is it, like, really buggy, but, like, what the fuck are we supposed to be doing? There was nothing akin to, like, the Terraria wiki where, like, you could look up what to do. I think we had tried looking up on, like, the Steam forums, and people were just confused. There's nothing akin to, like, the guide in-game. You just kind of, like, walked around and mined things, and then got confused. And, like, apparently there were bosses, but, like, we never found them. We were playing back in March 2022. Before then, you just played Minecraft, and then you decided to start playing Terraria because you heard it was similar. The Minecraft and Terraria similarities thing is weird because it's something that used to be decently true. Like back in 2011, 2012, Minecraft and Terraria were pretty similar games. But over the course of their development, they've gone in very different directions. Terraria leaned very heavily into, like, the RPG and progression aspects of things, fleshing out its combat system, and turning more into, like, a combat-heavy RPG-ish game. Whereas Minecraft leaned a lot more heavily into the sandbox elements of things, and, like, the action-y part of Minecraft is, like, complete shit. And it's, I feel like, a good example of two games that started in a similar place but grew into very different ones over time. Terraria is an RPG. I would consider it to be a 2D, like, action RPG with sandbox elements. RPG is a very vague term, though. But given the heaviness of, like, the progression and combat elements of things, you know, choosing and sticking to a class, typically, having all of like the NPCs and like lore backing things up. I don't feel like calling it a sandbox is appropriate, and I feel like the next genre that I would describe to it would be an RPG. And if you compare the sandbox elements to the RPG elements, I feel like it's heavier on the RPG side than the sandbox side. So playing in 2016, Jesus, after 5 years, you're not even good. I mean, it's very easy to play Terraria for a long time without being particularly good at it. Like, the base game itself, if you don't go out of your way to challenge yourself, it's not a game that really pushes or challenges you that much. Like, if you're playing on a classic or softcore character, and you're playing on, you know, classic or expert difficulty, you're not really going to be pushed that hard, and as a result, you're probably not going to improve that much. Whereas if you're playing on medium or hardcore, or you're imposing challenges on yourself, you're playing on master mode, legendary mode, you're going to be put in a lot more difficult situations, and you're going to be forced to improve at the game a lot more. It's also very easy to rely on clutches in Terraria to carry you. Broken weapons, more so before 1.4. There are fewer weapons that are just busted OP nowadays, as they've nerfed a lot of them. But, relying on broken strategies, or using crutches, like always getting the Rod of Discord and using the Rod of Discord to dodge everything, or building super tanky all the time and just like shrugging everything off with face tanking, or knowing strategies or arenas that trivialize bosses and always using those arenas. If you're not getting pushed to have to get better at the game, then you won't. You're not just going to... You'll reach a certain point and then never really progress beyond there. And that's perfectly fine. Like, you don't have to be, like, pushing yourself all the time. But, like, playing the game like this and, like, the skills that I've acquired in Terraria aren't things that I've picked up just because I've played for a long time. There's things that I've picked up because I've played for a long time, and it was also, like, challenging myself a lot during those hours. I had said this, back during, I think, Dancepad only. And I think it's less true now because I've done a lot of, Journey and, classic characters on stream, because I feel like medium core and hardcore are less stream friendly. But especially before, 1.4, I played, like, pretty much exclusively medium and hardcore. I never played softcore characters. Even on, I would play multiplayer characters with friends, and we were all playing medium core, and would drop all of our items whenever we died. And would have to, like, go through sorting out whose items were which, and whatnot. Rainworld is quite slow. In terms of what? A circle has 3 lines. A circle has 1 line. Granted, you can draw a circle with as many lines as you want, but most circles just have 1 continuous line going around the entirety of it. You can pick up a pencil and draw a circle without lifting it. That's 1 line. What things in Terraria caught my attention, made me continue playing it over the years? I don't know. A triangle? Are you okay? This feels like a 2nd grade math class worksheet where you have to, like, pick the word that's incorrect and fill it in with the correct one. Like, oh, a triangle has 4 lines, and you have to, like, underline the 4 and, like, change it to a 3. Look up triangle with 4 sides on Google. No, I'm currently killing the Moonlord with the Lawnmower. Pacing, and for example, you went to 5 Pebbles Chamber, it took him a good while to actually talk to you. Yeah, yeah. Rainwood's pacing is a bit slow. It's particularly slow because, dying and exploring the world. What would I do if Moonlord kills me? Just stop. I don't know. I'm not gonna do it again. But yeah, that was one of my big issues with Rivulet's campaign, is that I felt like the pacing was fucking abysmal. But the game's not particularly story driven, so the pacing is really off. But yeah, there are some things that are just frustratingly slow. It can also be annoying how long it takes, like, to pass through karma gates, or, like, shelters to open at the start of a cycle, or stuff like that. Um, Let's take some water real quick. Water break. Okay. You ever said that it was a bad thing? Yeah, yeah. It's exactly a triangle can have 4 sides. When you look from the point of view of the associated circles to the sides of a triangle, the 4th side arises. You're treating the plane itself as a side, which I think is flawed if you're considering a 2-dimensional object. By considering the depth itself as a plane, and as a side, you're making it 3-dimensional. No? They're talking about how many sides a triangle has, and I think the argument is that a triangle has a 4th side because the, is a mathematical distortion made on scientific paper showing that it is possible. Just because a scientific paper was published suggesting it might be true does not make it true. Is it something to the effect of the sum of angles or things could theoretically make a triangle that would have, like, uh, are you saying the same thing that they were saying, that the plane that you're viewing the triangle on, the side facing you, is a fourth side? Because I would dispute that, because I feel like assessing that to be a side is inherently making the triangle a three-dimensional object, and it's no longer a triangle. And the backside would also be a side. It would have 5 sides, as would the bottom. But if you're saying a different thing, then that's different. It's not what you said. When you look from the point of view of the associated circles to the sides of a triangle, the fourth side arises. I don't know what you're talking about. I have not read this paper. I can't really comment on that. I'm not following what you're talking about. Links aren't allowed in this chat. You'd have to send it in, like, the Discord server. I do really like the... Can I get a source? No. You can't find the link. I would suggest doing that before positing something like this. As that's quite a substantial claim, and not having, you know, basing your whole argument on a scientific paper that you can't find, is not ideal. A tea got sawed in a dream. That is what it sounds like, yeah. I had a dream that triangles had 4 sides. The implications on the world are limitless. It's in the name. It's a triangle, not a tricidal. I mean, by implication, having 3 angles would imply it has 3 sides, but the name is 3 angles, not 3 sides. Yeah, even if a shape like that were to theoretically exist, um, whether or not it would still be considered a triangle is something else entirely. Like, even if you were to have a paper that would posit some mathematical proof as to why, by definition of a triangle, you could distort it in some way that would cause the existence of a fourth side or fourth angle, um, could that shape still be considered a triangle? Or is it just some other shape entirely? Um, and that's, entirely basing on the assumption that this paper and proof does exist, which seems um, questionable at this point. Vsauce, you think, did a video on it. Did he do a video on it, or did he not do a video on it? That really doesn't inspire confidence in your claim. Um, if you know who made the video, then you should be able to probably find it pretty easily and then find the associated paper. I mean, is there a associated paper with it? I'm not going to watch a Vsauce video. Um, but I would assume it would, like, link to uh, the source for that. No? Remove the spaces. That wasn't the question. Can't post the link? Yeah, links aren't allowed in the chat. Where you send? I mean, you sent the link to the Vsauce thing just without the colon and backslash and the period. You could just do that and just have people add in the colon or whatever. Yes, I'm aware that I would have to add the periods too. You try to summarize it? Okay. Okay. It does in his papers. This basically created a new dimension. Um, the midpoint of each triangle side, foot of each altitude is the midpoint. Means order center. Yeah. When you said he created a new dimension, my first thought was, so it's no longer a two-dimensional object, and a triangle is a two-dimensional object. No. It still is a two-dimensional object. How can you add a dimension to another object without adding a dimension to it? How does that work? I think dimension exists in the third, just like the third and the fourth and fifth. Okay. I suppose that makes sense, but um you woke up this like 10 minutes after you woke up. Nice, I guess. Is lava wet? No, lava is molten rock. It's not. Showing what the hell is going on. I'm killing the Moonlord with a lawnmower. As it works something like the flow between dimensions. 1D and 2D. I'm not really able to read and comprehend all of that right now. You know, you have no sense of wetness, you just feel the cool of the water, so you think things are wet, may not actually be wet. I don't think it's just the temperature of the water. I think it's probably other senses included in that. But I get what you're saying. Fourth dimension this time. I'm aware of that. Another spatial dimension. Essentially, it's positing that, like, distorting a two-dimensional triangle into a third dimension would cause it to have a fourth side in that dimension. Right? Or a triangle could be made with a fourth side in that distortion in that dimension. Is that the gist of what's going on there? Yeah, no, we're not talking about a fourth dimension. We're talking about a fourth side on the triangle. Here's the only drink you need. Why drink tea when you can drink water? I try to convert a semicircle into a line to preserve its form. You're doing nails again, but you don't want to go if you want to. I don't know, Vcoin. I don't know the way things look. So I don't know what would look good. Just do what your heart tells you. I'm not really following what you're saying, Mossy. I didn't read this paper, and my grasp of the concept in the first place is tenuous at best. Right now, you're saving for the only thing you need. Thigh highs, you need them. Understandable. How long have we been trying to do this for? I think we're like probably around 60 hours now. I don't know. I'm a madman. Thank you. My ankle itches for some reason. So we've done almost 7,000 damage this stream. Over the span of like 2 hours or so. Pretty good pace. This Moonlord is 75 hours. We'll see. What am I going to do about the core? Why would the core be an issue? Like, I'm going to do to the core the exact same thing I've done to every other body part. They've all been one fight, Skeletron. Like, I'm going to teleport on top of the core and hit it with a lawnmower. Which is the same thing I've done to every other Moonlord body part. There's not really much more to it than that. I mean... yeah, Skeletron. I'm not following what you're saying, Mossy. I would just stop trying to explain it, because I'm not in a situation where I can really read and digest the information that you're posing. Or sorry, that you're giving me. Nor, I'll be honest, am I particularly interested. I am not a mathematician, nor do I particularly care about mathematics. So I'm not going to, like, be really engaged in trying to, discern what you're saying. Almost halfway? I'm more than halfway. The rate that we deal damage to, the hands was significantly lower than the rate we deal damage to the top eye and the core. Which means, while he's at more than half HP, the rate that we deal damage to that, you know, last 2/3 of his HP is considerably higher than the rate we dealt damage to the first third of his HP. Which means, we end up dealing a lot damage a lot faster, so we're more than halfway there. Like, the top eye takes damage about twice as fast as the hands did. And the core will probably be even faster than that. I know 1 + 1 = 2. Don't tell, what's his face? The guy that played War Machine in the first Iron Man movie. Would this be possible without the funny teleport box? How is it funny? I don't... What's the joke? What? In any case, I think you could find a way to do it, but it would be considerably, drastically less efficient if you were not teleporting. You have to teleport more often because of the leech. I'll just put another teleporter down. I don't know. I'll figure it out when I get there. I don't, as I've said before, I don't have a plan. I mean, I'll figure it out when it comes up, but, like, the extent of a plan I have is that, yeah, I'll just teleport on top of it, I guess. That's about it. How am I going to deal with it? I'll teleport on it. If there's another problem that comes up, I'll find a way to deal with it, but... I think the plan of just teleport on top of it is perfectly fine. How do we find a deal with it while fighting it? I don't see why that would be an issue. The Moonlord doesn't deal very much damage in his second phase if you sync up all the True Eye of Cthulhu cycles, and like, if the core is at full HP, there's no concern about the core healing, because there's nothing for the core to heal. So you can just sit there and do whatever you want. I have a pickaxe, I have teleporters, I have a grand design, I have a switch, I have a magic conch, I have a magic mirror. Yes, Skeletron. That's where I want to go. Are there any more speed buffs that benefit the Lawnmower? There is nothing that benefits the Lawnmower. With the slight exception of the Shark Tooth Necklace will give it a small amount of armor penetration. The Lawnmower is not a melee weapon. It does not benefit from anything that benefits melee weapons. It will not get flask boosts, it will not get frost armor boosts, it will not get melee crit damage boosts, or crit chance boosts, it will not get melee damage boosts, it will not get melee speed boosts. The Lawnmower is classless, yes. As classless damage, it also won't have its damage increased. Even if you buff a bunch of, like, Avenger Emblem type effects, it's still not going to increase. Nor is it able to critically hit. There's not really anything that I can do to improve the performance of the Lawnmower. With the slight exception, like I said, of using the Shark Tooth Necklace, which would allow me to get Sharpening Station. The Lawnmower is not a melee weapon. The Sharpening Station only affects melee weapons. It checks the damage type of the weapon you are holding. If the weapon you are holding deals melee damage, the Sharpening Station will apply 12 defense penetration to whatever you deal damage with. Which is why you can hold out. There's no worse weapon than a Lawnmower. There are two weapons. I'd say there are three weapons that could potentially be argued to be the worst weapon. Those being the Lawnmower, the Wooden Hammer, and I'd say Paper Airplane. And each one has strengths and weaknesses relative to the other ones. I would consider the Lawnmower to be the worst of them, though. The Hammer and the Paper Airplane can benefit from being able to use damage over time effects. You can put on Frost Armor. You could use Flasks for the Hammer. You could use a Magma Stone. Even if you don't use those two weapons have a very, very good selling point, which is that those two weapons actually fucking function as weapons. The main thing about the Lawnmower that sucks is the Lawnmower does nothing if you are not walking in the direction, holding down the movement key in the direction the Lawnmower is facing, and standing on the ground. If you are in midair at all, the Lawnmower does nothing. If you're not walking, if you're standing still, the Lawnmower does nothing. If you're walking backwards, the Lawnmower does nothing. And even when it does something, it has a tiny hitbox where, like, the blade is, and that's it. The Lawnmower does deal somewhat respectable damage relative to those two weapons. The Hammer's base damage is 2. The Paper Airplane's base damage is 4. The Lawnmower's base damage is 8. However, and the Lawnmower actually does attack decently fast. It can hit 5 times per second at most. Whereas the Wooden Hammer has a use time of about 30. And Paper Airplanes, I want to say, is somewhere in, like, the 15 range. But it's very difficult to hit with the Lawnmower consistently. It's very difficult to make it deal damage in the first place, especially if you don't have knockback immunity. It is very annoying trying to hit things. The Lawnmower is also not able to crit. Paper Airplanes and the Wooden Hammer can both crit. But, like, the reason we're doing this teleporter setup is because it would be monumentally difficult to find a way to consistently hit the Moonlord without using teleporters, because we can't just fly up to him. like we could with any other weapon in the game. Paper airplanes also have the benefit of being a ranged weapon, and being able to attack from a distance. But yeah, you could definitely have a more difficult time depending on the stipulations you make, using a wooden hammer or a paper airplane relative to the lawnmower. Like, the lawnmower was quite effective against Deerclops, because we just sat inside of Deerclops with knockback immunity on a minecart and just mowed him down. And it went pretty well. Yeah, that's what I had said about the... I mean, the damage buffs are mostly useless. The main thing that you would want out of those buffs would be the damage over time effects from stuff like Frost Armor or Flasks. And the Wooden Hammer gets the Sharpening Station. It would be difficult to stack enough damage boosts to have anything resembling a noticeable impact on late game bosses. Given just the sheer amount of defense, the Moonlord, the lowest defense point of the Moonlord are his hands, which have 40 defense. His top eye has 50 and his core has 70. 40 defense is going to reduce damage taken by 20. You would need to buff a paper airplane to deal 22 damage, which is more than a 500% damage boost required. And remember, critical hits apply after defense, not before. So having crit boosts wouldn't help there. Even against something like the twins, you could potentially get more than 1 damage against their first phase, but against their second phase, Spasmatism got 28 defense. You need to buff the paper airplane to 16, which would be 400% damage boost. And, like, that's... A wooden hammer is even harder, because it's at 2 base damage to begin with. But the wooden hammer has the benefit of the sharpening station. Doesn't the lawnmower do 80 damage? The lawnmower does 8 damage. Am I having fun? Not particularly. Yeah, it's tough to say which of those would be the worst because they all are better in different situations. Well, we only do 1 damage because the Moonlord has defense. Against something like Phase 2 Plantera with the Sharktooth Necklace, I think we did like 5 damage a hit, which is not terrible. Oh, the Lawnmower does also pierce. Granted, the piercing is generally not particularly helpful because your lawnmower has no range whatsoever, but when fighting large crowds of enemies bunching up, you can hit a lot of them at once, which can make farming things a lot more manageable. But yeah, the lawnmower, I don't think the lawnmower was added with the intention of someone trying to beat the game with the lawnmower, because the lawnmower is essentially just like a... They probably added the lawnmower dealing damage as an afterthought, because its primary focus is just mowing the lawn for, like, golf things. And they're like, you know what, you can run things over with a mower, let's tack some damage on there. I feel like that's probably what happened. It doesn't even say that the lawnmower deals damage. It just says that it mows grass and reduces spawn rates on the mowed grass. Kind of makes the grass uglier. Yeah, I don't like mowed grass. But see, I would also consider that to be true of, like, grass on, like, golf courses to begin with. I don't like golf courses. In fact, I really quite dislike golf courses. They're extremely destructive to the environment. They look ugly and sterile. And they're just fucking everywhere where I live. Driving down the road, I probably passed like 5 golf courses just like driving to my grandparents' house 15 minutes away. to playlist paused. Now, mini golf, on the other hand, fucking love mini golf. Mini golf's great. I'm gonna get torn up by the golf clubs hitting the dirt. Mini golf is tiny. It's not particularly destructive to the environment. It doesn't take up tons and tons of space. You got, like, dinosaurs and shit. I have never been to a golf course that had, like, giant dinosaurs and shit, okay? You don't get that shit at golf courses, but mini golf, dinosaurs are fucking everywhere. Love dinosaurs. They're like pirates and shit, and like somebody got like fish, and like it can be indoors. You got glow in the dark mini golf, where like you put the ball in the hole and it gives it like the glowy juice, and then it glows in the dark. Golf is bad for the environment. Oh, golf is terrible for the environment. Really, really bad. Golf courses basically completely destroy the entire environment where they are, and they take up, like, acres of land. Like, a golf course is not an environment. Like, basically everything on a golf course is artificially put there, and it completely killed what was there naturally. They're huge. They essentially destroy what was there, put a bunch of fake turf in, and just annihilate local ecosystems. Now, golf is fine in places that are naturally suited to golf. Places like, you know, Scotland, where golf originated. Tons of great open plains, natural areas for golf. But the problem is people take golf to regions where golf is not meant to be. They completely destroy the environment there. And the other thing is golf courses consume a ton of water, I'm pretty sure, maintaining the grass. Why does health disappear when I teleport? That is a visual bug that occurs because the Moonlord's core temporarily disappears when he teleports. So it's subtracting 75,000 HP, which is his core HP. I'm gonna play mini golf now. There's tons of mini golf places near where I live. Problem is, it's like really hot outside, so I haven't really been to them recently. Yeah, golf is really, really destructive. Especially in regions that have really gorgeous natural terrain and wildlife that lives there. Like, a lot of the golf courses around here are built on, like, the essentially graves of what were once really lush and beautiful forests that were then just destroyed and replaced with really sterile looking green mounds where old white people swing around clubs to go hit balls into holes. I don't think Donald Trump goes golfing where I live. I certainly hope he doesn't. Yeah, I remember you, Philip. You were here like yesterday. How would I... Usually when somebody says remember me, it'll be somebody that, like, hasn't been here for like weeks or months, not somebody who was here yesterday. Yeah, golf is probably, it's the most destructive sport I can think of to the environment. Because, like, it really just, like, devastates whatever land there was before creating the course, because golf courses are really big, and then they consume like tons of water to maintain them. Which weapon is more base damage, Meow Meow or Psycho Knife? Meow Meow. Unless you're counting like the Psycho Knife in stealth, which is different. But the Psycho Knife out of stealth does not have 200 base damage. In stealth? I think the Psycho Knife gets like a 300% damage boost, and I think its base damage is somewhere slightly below 100, so I think I'd probably give it to Psycho Knife. Weirdest thing I know about Terraria? Herplings float, derplings don't. I don't know. Random niche fact. You can change your character name at the character screen to reset the Angler's quest, and you can do multiple quests in one day by changing your character's name. Wait, no, coin gun? That wasn't the question. It wasn't a question of what is the weapon with the highest base damage. It was a question of which of these two weapons have the highest base damage. Oh yeah, people are horny as hell for mimics. I'm not surprised there. Also, the coin gun does not have base damage. Coins have the base damage. Besides, I'm not really surprised at bringing up something has Rule 34 out. That's the whole point of it, is that things you wouldn't expect to have porn. Why are people down bad for living chests? Because they give... there are two options. You either make the living chest sexy, or you make it do something to somebody who is attractive, and people are horny for either one of those. Don't underestimate the things that horny people are into. Vo is pretty bad. I don't know. I feel like people have really skewed idea of kinks and fetishes. Because, like, I would not consider Vor to be, like, a particularly extreme or pretty bad. Like, I've seen some shit. And I'm sorry, like, it's weird, but, like, I'd just be like, oh, okay, that's weird. I don't like that. But, like, what's my least favorite NPC? I don't like... Santa Claus. He's up to something. I don't trust him. Why would people say the zoologist? The zoologist just gives you, like, pets to fill pylons with. Nah, stylist gives you... lets you get your hair did. She got nice haircuts. What about the golfer? Golfer's convenient pylon early game with angler. Helmets all the time. Some helmets still have your hair apply. And maybe if I had better hair, I wouldn't wear helmets all the time. I wear like right now I'm not wearing a helmet. I'm wearing sunglasses. I'm just balding. What's my favorite armor? I don't know. Hollowed armor? I don't really have that much preference towards armor. I don't have a favorite. Crystal glitch exists? Yeah, so does fucking transmutation. And if you apply the standards of what you can achieve through a glitch or exploit, everything kind of falls apart when you can get, like, literally anything. Not everybody is going to be glitching the game for infinite money. Favorite vanity set? I like the heart hairpin that you get from the traveling merchant. Flink's fur coat is pretty ballin' too. Can I explain Terraria lore to you? No, I can't. Me explaining Terraria lore for you would require me to, 1, care about Terraria lore, and 2, be knowledgeable about Terraria lore. And neither of those things are true. Even the hollowed enemies and bosses are great money sources. Yeah, but like, free money. Yeah, this is Urban Jungle, is the name of this song. My favorite armor is a vanity? Didn't I just say that? I like Flink's fur coat and I like the heart hairpin. You like red set? I think most of the dev sets, I don't like too much. They're very, like, outlandish, and, I tend to like more, like, minimalistic looks. Um... 1.4 though, once you have access to rainbow dye, you can't resist putting it on. You have access to rainbow dye. What? Rainbow dye's been in the game for a long time. You have solo dye with Timeless Traveler, Plaguebringer. Celebration Mark 2 is made to celebrate a dev's birthday. No, I'm not familiar with the backstory of the Mark 2. You don't know how to make dyes? The dye vat. And then you just combine a bunch of the dyes to make the rainbow dyes. Sorry, I'm not very good at math, Philip. Like the Orator Scowl. Die Trader arrives when you get a strange plant. The Die Trader arrives when you have a die plant in your inventory. You don't need a strange plant for the Die Trader. If you needed a strange plant for the Die Trader, he would be a hard mode NPC. As long as you have a plant that can be turned into a die, which is blueberries, a yellow marigold, a sky blue flower, a pink prickly pear, lime kelp, squid ink, tons of stuff, then the Die Trader can show up. What's my attempt now? What do you mean? This is the first attempt. What are my favorite wings? I like steampunk wings. I usually, I like steampunk wings a lot. I think they look good. My favorite drink? Water. Like water. Like a vortex booster? I never really make the, pretty much all of the killer wings are obsolete by the fact that the Celestial Starboard exists, unfortunately. Unless it's normal mode. Yeah, but I would have to play on normal mode for that. Favorite yo-yo? The Eye of Cthulhu. Eye of Cthulhu is the only yo-yo that, like, I might actually use. Favorite class? Ranger. Put yellow dye on the Celestial Starboard, so it looks like a Warp Star. The B yo-yo? High five's fine. I forget the high five exists most of the time. But like I don't really use it. Able to try in for the looks. The B yo-yo is kind of outclassed. No, B yo-yo is pretty good. B yo-yo is like one of the best melee weapons you can have for Skeletron. Like it's between B yo-yo and Flamerang, and I think B yo-yo might win. Like sure, if you're using it against like the wall of flesh, but it'll be outclassed by that point. But it's mostly, you know, using the pre-Skeletron phase. High five versus Cascade. Pretty sure high five is better. Not positive. I don't really know the yo-yo super well though. But I do know the high five is a good yo-yo for like a good melee weapon for Skeletron. Oh, is Cascade post Skeletron? I don't know the yo-yos very well. It's entirely possible. I might be mixing it up with a different yo-yo. But yeah, the Eye of Cthulhu, is a yo-yo that I use sometimes. It's easy to get. Best pre-golem bullet thing. Are you asking for bullets, or what is a bullet thing? What are you fighting as well, because it matters. The enemy you're fighting, bullet? Okay. Gun. Against what? Because what you're fighting is going to influence that answer. And I'm going to have 2 follow-up questions. The questions being, which gun? And can you aim? And depending on the answer to all of those, I'll give you a different answer. You're fighting Golem. Okay. I would have to play Mage, and that would be a very, very tall order. I don't like Magic. Yeah, so Witch Gun, Mega Shark with Chlorophyte is not good for Golem. That is... No, don't do that. But which gun are you using, and how well can you aim? Golem is one of the easiest bosses to hit in the game. Why would you use Chlorophyte bullets on him? Venus Magnum, okay. Venus Magnum's good. You're on mobile? Okay. If mobile is going to pose a serious aiming issue, I would use Chlorophyte bullets. Otherwise, I would use Venom, Crystal, or Ichor. One of those three. Crystal's pretty good against Golem. Probably your best bet, though. Damage-wise. Nano bullets or smoke bounce? Smoke bounce? Nano bullets are ass. The smoke bounce sucks. Chlorophyte is better, though. Chlorophyte are like the worst bullet in the game, damage-wise. However, they have auto-aiming, which is only really useful if your aim sucks or you're fighting a very agile boss. No, the Venus Magnum only turns normal bullets into high velocity. It won't override the bullet's normal damage type. Is it Nano Post Plantera? They outpost Plantera. I believe it's 6 damage, Edge Banana. But yeah, you should not use Chlorophyte unless you're struggling to hit your target. Chlorophyte does like 28. Chlorophyte bullets do not have 28 base damage. Chlorophyte bullets have like 6 base damage. Maybe 9. I forget which. One of those two. Exploding is good for Plantera? No. No, they're not. We're also not fighting Plantera, we're fighting Golem. If you're fighting Plantera, I would use Crystal, Ichor, either of those two above Exploding. Even High Velocity. Against Golem, damage-wise, your best option is probably going to be Crystal. Crystal can be a little wonky sometimes, though. Ichor is decent base damage-wise. Venom is also pretty solid, and Chlorophyte is good if you struggle with aiming. But yes, Chlorophyte bullets used to be considerably better. They also used to be considerably easier to make. Yeah, High Velocity are pretty solid. High Velocity is a decent option for Golem, because you can hit his hands and his core segment at the same time, by shooting horizontally, but pickaxes, drills make an annoying noise. I have a habit of using Infinite Musket Pouch. Infinite Musket Pouch is not too bad with Venus Magnum because it converts them into high velocity, and they'll have that piercing. Isn't Wooden Hammer the worst melee damage? Yes, what about it? That sounds like it's, like, refuting something, but I'm not sure what that relevancy is. I used Onyx Blaster. Venus Magnum is considerably better than the Onyx Blaster. Onyx Blaster can work fine, but the Venus Magnum is much better than the Onyx Blaster. Bubble gun. Again, not a gun, also not a bullet. They're asking about bullets. Onyx Blaster is pre-mech. Yeah, but I mean, it's a good pre-mech weapon. I would not use it for anything past the mech bosses, but it can be used to decent effect because it is a solid weapon. Onyx is really OP for how early you can get it. It's really good. I never really get the Onyx Blaster. I mean, the thing is, it's not even the best pre-mech ranger weapon. It's like the third or fourth best pre-mech ranger weapon. Which really just says a lot about how good ranger weapons are. And yes, the Onyx Blaster did get nerfed. It's nowhere near as good as it once was. It got like a 20% either damage or attack speed nerf. I'd chill it with the edge a bit, Appomattox. Yeah, Onyx Blaster is fine, but I would not use it against things that late. Yeah, Crystal got nerfed too. Best pre-mech ranger weapon is Tsunami. No, the best pre-mech ranger weapon by technicality would be the coin gun. But Tsunami would be the second one after that. I also wouldn't really categorize the Tsunami as pre-mech, while you can do fish run pre-mech. I don't think it's particularly fruitful, considering that for valid options there. But, yes. What about gun? Onyx Blaster, it's about on par with the Uzi, I think. Uzi's about on par with the Mega Shark. The Mega Shark, but is slightly worse than the Mega Shark, and the Mega Shark is a bit better than the Onyx Blaster. So I think Onyx Blaster and Uzi are probably about on par. Duke Fishron is an optional boss that can be fought at any point, but he really disrupts conversations there. You wish Gatligator was better? I do too. Especially given how hard it is to get in the first place. But yeah, I would also take a Dart weapon probably above an Onyx Blaster, like a Dart Pistol or a Dart Rifle. I like Dart weapons a lot, and they're particularly considerably better against the Destroyer with Cursed Darts. And it's meant for post-Plantera? No, it's meant for post-Golem. The Empress of Light, Duke Fishron, Pumpkin Moon, Frost Moon are all tiered at post-Golem. Even if they can be accessed earlier, they are intended to be fought at that stage in progression. Duke Fishron is intended... It's too easy post-Golem? No, it's not. Duke Fishron is a more difficult boss than Golem. He has way more HP and deals way more damage than Golem. He is intended to be fought post-Golem. That's why Duke Fishron got, like, all those big buffs in 1.4.4, buffing his HP and making him invulnerable during those periods, is because he's intended to be fought post-Golem, but because of the difficulty sliding as the game went on, he ended up being easier, so they made him more difficult, gave him more HP, and gave him a period of invulnerability when transitioning phases, because he's supposed to be fought post-Golem. 1.2.4 was Duke Fishron's update, the fishing update. That's when he was added. Pumpkin is decently less difficult than Frost Moon. They did make Pumpkin Moon more difficult in 1.4.4. But yes, Pumpkin is easier than Frost Moon. But again, they're both post-Golem. Yes, they gave Duke Fishron an HP buff and made him invulnerable when transitioning between phases in 1.4.4. Consider Empress Flight and Duke post-Plantera. But they're available post-Plantera, but how the fuck can you look at the Empress of Light and Golem and tell me that the intended progression is to fight the Empress of Light before Golem? I don't see how you can say that with a straight face, because those two bosses are nowhere near comparable in difficulty. Golem is way easier by pretty much every discernible metric compared to those bosses. No, Lace Wings are post-Plantera, not post-Golem. Best pre-golem gun? Chain gun, if you consider doing frost moons. Other than that, I would say probably Venus Magnum. Coin gun? Coin gun's not a gun, it's a non-specific ranged weapon. It doesn't shoot bullets. You would not get benefits for gun damage with the Shroomite armor piece if you were using the coin gun. You would have to use the specialist one. Empress is supposed to be post-cultist? No, she is not post-cultist. She is post-golem pre-cultist. You can assess this by judging the tiering of her weapons and drops in comparison to the other things available at that stage. Post-cultist, the Empress of Light weapons are still outclassed by the pillars. So there wouldn't really be much point in fighting her there. Whereas they fit in line with other post-golem items, the stuff from the Moons, the stuff from Motion Madness, the stuff from Duke Fishron. You can also consider whether or not, you know, they're tiered for being fought at a particular stage by assessing how powerful the items they give are relative to the other things available at that stage. Like, you know, comparing Duke Fishron and the Empress of Light's drops, they're tiered at post-golem. They're in line with Motion Madness and the Moons. It beats out Razorpine? I didn't know that one. I thought Razorpine, combined with armor penetration stuff like Betsy's Wrath would have, outdone Bubblegum. I feel like Daytime Empress of Light is positioned either after Moonlord or right before the Pillars. Daytime Empress of Light is positioned to be fought at the same time as regular Empress of Light, because otherwise the Terra Prisma is outclassed by the Dragon by the time you get to the Pillars. There's no reason to fight Daytime Empress of Light if you do it after the Pillars, because by that point you have Dragon, and Dragon's better than the Terra Prisma. The usefulness of the Terra Prisma is doing it for Golem, doing it for the Moons, doing it for the Cultist, but by the time you're done with the Cultist and are onto the Stardust Pillar, the Dragon's, like, better than the Terra Prisma most of the time. So it doesn't really make much sense to fight a boss that doesn't give you any meaningful reward. What's left post-Plantera? The dungeon. And again, just because they can be fought post-Plantera doesn't mean you need to fight them post-Plantera, or that you need to fight them not post-Plantera. But they are tiered and balanced to be fought post-Golem. The devs themselves have confirmed this. I don't have these screenshots of them saying it on Discord, but they have stated that the Moons, the Empress of Light, and Duke Fishron are all balanced and intended to be fought post-Golem. Now, you can fight them at other points in time. They're a fine challenge. They'll give you a fine reward. But, given the difficulty of Golem and the difficulty of these events, they're all intended to be fought, balanced to be fought. Intended isn't quite the right word, because intention is, weirder, but it's like how you could go fight Skeletron as the first boss you fight in pre-hard mode, but, balancing-wise, very few people do that. We are not going to talk about anything related to 1.4.5. I am going to tell you all that as a warning, as the conversation may potentially be shifting in that direction. Anything related to 1.4.5 spoilers will get you instantly banned. The reason that the Moonlord didn't drop any summoning weapons is because the weapons that you got from the Pillars, which were added at the same time as the Moonlord, were, like, already strong enough. Like, Dragon kicks ass. And whips didn't exist at that point in time. So it was between another minion, which would kind of make the ones that you got from the pillars just feel really weird, or sentries. And given that sentries didn't really exist very much at that point, because this was before the old one's army was added, I think they went with the sentries. But yeah, his summoner drops are very underwhelming. And yes, Summoner just sucked before 1.4. There's a reason Summoner was a running, like, meme/understanding. You at least need a whip. Yeah, they buffed the sentries, and the new sentries do kick ass after being buffed in 1.4.4. They're really good. Especially with Stardust Armor being worked to buff sentries as well. Give you more sentry slots. Yeah, before 1.4, Summoner just sucked. It wasn't even like a legitimate class in 1.2. 1.2 Summoner was like somewhere between Thrower and a legitimate class. Where it wasn't quite as extremely unsupported as... Well, actually, Thrower didn't even exist in 1.2, but for the sake of comparison, Thrower only existed in 1.3. But Summoner basically wasn't legitimate before 1.3. No, Throwing was a shit class that was a mistake and never should have been made. But Summoner basically had very little support in 1.2. You had, like, Spooky Armor when Pumpkin Moon was added. You had, like, Tiki Armor. There was Bee Armor from Queen Bee, and, like, a couple of minions throughout the game, but it was really not good. And people had a general understanding, because you also didn't have whips, and a lot of the minions just sucked, because this was before a lot of the good minions were added, that Summoner was just a bad class, and it was like a, kind of like a meme joke of, like, doing things as Summoner, and it just sucked. And then it was legitimized in 1.3. They added more support for Summoner. They added Summoner as the 4th class, with the pillars. And they made Summoner better. But Summoner was still bad. Like, Summoner was still very underwhelming compared to every other class in the game. Its damage was not very good. And then in 1.4, they gave whips to Summoners. And whips were a massive benefit for Summoner. Spider was 1.2. Yeah, Pumpkin Moon also did a lot in 1.2 to make Summoner better. But 1.4 added whips and a lot of good AI summoning weapons, which is the main thing that makes 1.4 Summoner not shit. Is that 1.4 added a bunch of minions that were good, that had good AI. The Blade Staff, the Terra Prisma, the Kitty Cat, the Flinks, even like the Finch as an early game minion that's somewhat consistently obtainable and doesn't have shit AI, and has good piercing. The Vampire Frog, after they reworked the tongue to not just deal damage when the tongue was out. Desert Tiger's the Kitty Cat. The Sanguine Staff. These are all minions that have good AI. They function well. They don't have janky requirements. So, you combine all of that with the fact that they added whips, which were a big thing. And while it might seem like Summoner is underwhelming, Summoner properly utilizing whip stacking does fearsome DPS. Whip stacking is important to learn to play Summoner very efficiently and to deal very good DPS, but Summoner has good damage. Now, granted, is it at every stage of the game really good and going to be Glass Cannon outperforming all the other classes? No. But it is certainly fine, and a lot of people that I know have a lot of fun with whip stacking and Summoner. You don't know what pre-Moonlord throwable weapon is nor armor? Well, they don't exist anymore. What happened is, in 1.3, the devs decided to add a 5th damage type for some reason. I'm still not entirely sure what the reasoning was for, because they added basically no support for it throughout the entire game, which was throwing damage. And they essentially took pre-existing ranged weapons, which were the ones that you threw and consumed, things like throwing knives, grenades, shurikens. They added like bone javelins and bone throwing knives and fossil armor as a throwing weapon, as a throwing armor set, and they also made the ninja set a throwing armor set. And they essentially made thrower as a class, which only existed in very early pre-hard mode. It had like no support beyond very early pre-hard mode. Fossil armor was like fossil armor and bone javelins were like the highest you got. And then they realized in 1.4, hey, you know, that was throwing sucks. We didn't give any support to thrower beyond like very early game. We should just make these ranged weapons and turn fossil armor into a ranged weapon set instead of a throwing armor set that nobody uses or likes. And yeah, so throwing didn't exist before 1.3, and it didn't exist after 1.3. It was just a weird, edgy phase that the Ranger class went through for a couple years. And for some reason, people are really attached to Thrower. I don't know why. It was a dumb idea. It was not implemented well at all. Throwing sucked, and like it wasn't fun either. But because it was something that was taken away, some people have this romanticized idea about throwing or want to like make thrower good or bring it back or things like that. But no, throwing deserves to be dead. It was a bad idea. It was a bad class. It was a mistake. Should have gotten boomerangs and more weapons for hard mode. At that point, melee would have been super shafted, because especially back then, those were like the meat and bones of melee's ability to fight things at any kind of range. Like, without Shadow Flame knives in 1.3, trying to fight Shadow Flame knives or boomerangs, you would be extremely hard-pressed to do, like, jack shit as melee. Because this is before, like, all the reworks in 1.4 and 1.4.4. What about Drippler Crippler? The Drippler Crippler didn't exist. And this was before flails got reworked in 1.4. Like, every flail was just, like, complete shit. Aside from, like, launched flails, like the Flare-On. Yeah, Drippler Crippler was a 1.4 weapon, and remember that flails sucked ass before 1.4. Because they didn't work how they function now. And melee should be melee. It should have not gotten ranged projectiles. It did get ranged projectiles, and, like, the way the game works, like, true melee just doesn't... would be miserable to play most of the time, using the term from Calamity. Like, there's nothing wrong with melee having projectiles. It does at this point. It was a decision they made a long time ago. Back in... What was the first melee weapon with a projectile? I mean, boomerangs have existed for quite a while. I think since launch, or 1.0. First sword I can think of, or things were like they really started... Oh yes, well, Star Fury was originally a magic weapon, not a melee weapon. And Enchanted Sword was 1.2, I think. 1.2 is when you started getting, like, a lot of the hard mode projectile swords. Um, yeah, you know what's weird? The fact that the harpoon is a ranged weapon and not a melee weapon. I think the harpoon was originally a melee weapon, and then it was changed to a ranged weapon. Arcalis technically a projectile. Arcalis also did not exist before, I believe 1.3 is when it was added. Maybe 1.2, but I think 1.3. Anko makes sense as a melee weapon. The thing is, the harpoon should be a melee weapon. The harpoon, is a ranged weapon that does not consume ammunition and functions like exactly like a launched flail. Things like the Flare-On, the Fist of Golem. Things that have been... other things that work very similarly are melee weapons. But for some reason, it's a ranged weapon. The harpoon. I've used the harpoon before. No, I like the harpoon. Don't shit talk the harpoon. When I did Terraria without producing light, the harpoon was like how I killed Skeletron. I think I had like a platinum bow with wooden arrows, and I had to use the harpoon to kill the skull. And it actually does pretty solid DPS if you point blank things with the harpoon. Yeah, I don't think it's worth considering too much about, like, random nuances about, like, one weapon should be another class's type or something like that. It was a lot more than just not making light. It was, not making light or doing anything that involved making light. Which means I couldn't craft with any crafting materials that produced light when dropped on the ground. Like, I couldn't do anything with souls or, like, the lunar fragments. I couldn't make NPC houses. I couldn't use weapons that produced light. I couldn't make anything at, like, forges, because those produce light. Just use your Brent through the cheese method on For the Worthy. Worked great. Thank you. Glad it worked. Glad you understood how to make it work in For the Worthy, because I know a couple people were struggling with the idea of flipping it upside down. What weapon was my go-to for endgame? And not producing light? I don't remember. I mean, there were videos on the channel. You could just go watch them. I don't remember it super well. I think I used the Tsunami. Probably just Tsunami with wooden arrows. But, like, to get the bug net, to get Duke Fishron, because I couldn't make a house for the merchant, I had to do fishing quests with the angler to get the golden bug net. Like, there's a lot of roundabout things like that. But, like I said, it was a while ago. I don't remember a lot of the details. Yeah, like I said a little while ago, I was rewatching the, like, new Doctor Who series, the ones from, like, Christopher Eccleston onward. And I'm at the point now of having reached Peter Capaldi. And you know what? I like his grumpy old man energy. I like it. I do have a little bit of difficulty understanding the Scottish accent sometimes. But, you know, I vibe with the grumpy old man. Finish putting platforms in the Planetary Arena. The Doctor Who is good. Should you watch it? I think it's a great show. I've been enjoying rewatching it. If you do watch Doctor Who, I would watch like the new Doctor Who series. The classic ones are more difficult to get into as they're quite dated. They do have a lot of really entertaining moments, especially regarding like budgeting things. Because a lot of like the alien costumes and things are just like really shit, and you can just see like the unpaid interns' legs moving in like the robot suit or something. The classic ones have a bunch of lost media. Yeah, I know my dad has all of the Tom Baker. Oh, sorry. Oh yeah. Wait. I'm like having a brain fart here. There's Tom and Colin, and for some reason I want to call both of their last names Baker. But I don't think that's correct. And I cannot remember which one is which. But I know he has all those on DVD, and I've watched a lot of those, but it's hard to get all of them. There's music in the background. Is it really quiet? It's the Rainworld soundtrack. But yeah, I would start... It's just called Doctor Who. I would start from... It's all, like, series of seasons. I would start with, the Doctor Who starting with Christopher Eccleston. It's weird because, there's a lot of overarching storylines, and things between seasons and references that you wouldn't, like, understand. However, there have been several, like, soft reboots throughout the new Doctor Who seasons. Christopher Eccleston to David Tennant, the 9th and 10th Doctors, have a lot of overlapping continuity. When you get to Matt Smith, the 11th Doctor, that pretty much sheds almost all of what the storylines and characters that had been there for David Tennant and Christopher Eccleston. And then Peter Capaldi seems to have some, but not that many, overarching connections to Matt Smith's. How many Doctors are there? A complicated question. 13, technically 14. There's multiple Doctors. Yeah, the show's been running for like 50 years. The idea is basically that the Doctor is an alien who's able to regenerate and change his face whenever he's wounded and would die, which is a very clever idea for a long-running TV show, as you can constantly cycle in different actors while keeping the same main character. Yeah, I would start with season 1 of the new Doctor Who with Christopher Eccleston. Was there a female Doctor? Yes, the 13th Doctor is played, is a woman. I haven't gotten to those ones yet. Yeah, I would start with the 9th one. And then there's also, like, the War Doctor from the Day of the Doctor thing with John Hurt. But I don't think he's counted in the numbering. And then David Tennant also, like, cheated, with one regeneration. My favorite, like, random tidbit fact is, like, the fact that, David Tennant's Doctor, the 10th Doctor, just, like, canonically fucks, and, like, is married to and slept with, Queen Elizabeth I. But yeah, I would start with Eccleston and then move on from there. There are some episodes that are, like, some of the episodes will feel a bit dated, and some of the episodes are kind of weak. Like, You know, in those early couple seasons, I find the Gelf episode very underwhelming. There's I can't stand the fucking episode during David Tennant and Rose's run, I think near the end of season 2. Where it's like the Olympic one with like the girl who like turns her drawings to life or whatever. I can't stand that episode. That's like the only episode that I skipped on the rewatch. I'm doing alright, Quuxy. Yeah, I would just start with the first episodes because it introduces... It's a reboot, so it introduces, like, the general premise of the show and information as a slow burn. Season 1 also has John Barrowman as Captain Jack Harkness, and goddamn, love Captain Jack Harkness. And here also a grandmother that stores sewing kits in a butter cookie tin. I don't know where my grandmother stores her sewing kits. Will I watch the Barbie movie? No. Okay, I think when I hit the 10,000 mark, I'm gonna cut this stream off. I feel like nobody uses Palladium armor. Oh no, Palladium armor is great. People certainly use it. Cobalt armor is the one that, like, nobody would use. Yeah, I think 10,000 is a good cutoff point for this stream. And that would be 47,000, because we started at 57,000. Wait. No, we didn't. Did we? Hold on. Yeah, I did. What do y'all prefer, free hard mode or hard mode was? I mean, strictly speaking, now that Shimmer exists, there's no reason to prefer the original ores, because you can just shimmer the higher tier ores into the lower tier ones. But I would go with see, I don't really care that much. Cobalt and Mithril are convenient because they require fewer bows in order to make a pickaxe, and generally with Cobalt especially, and to a degree with Mithril, you're mostly just gonna be mining enough until you can get a pickaxe, and it's easier to do that with those, because Palladium and or Chakram pickaxes take more bows. And then the Titanium pickaxe does have a really neat niche, where the Titanium pickaxe is the first pickaxe that's able to break 1 block per tick. It's the first fastest pickaxe in the game, where with enough mining speed buffs, you're able to reach maximum mining speed. So it is really neat by virtue of that. Also, I think the Titanium forge looks a lot cooler than the Adamantite forge. But in general, I don't really care that much. Titanium gives a pretty alright set bonus. I'd rather have... Adamantite has better damage stats. Outright. Never made Mythful Armor. Mythful Armor for melee is really fucking good, if you've never used it before. Damage-wise, Mythful Armor has the highest damage stats, even out of mixed armor sets, for melee. Because Mythful gives a 10% crit damage buff as the set bonus for melee. It's a bit glass cannony, but Mythful damage, especially for melee, really fantastic. I'm gonna play modded, use this cheat in Ice Golem for Frost Armor. Yeah, if you're a Frost Armor, it doesn't matter whether you have Adamantite or Titanium, if that's what you're going for. You're a Summoner and Mage player? If you're a Summoner, it really doesn't matter. And Mage, I'd probably go for Adamantite. Although, honestly, like... I really have two modes. I'm either not going to make a hard mode or armor, and I'm just going to, like, fight the mech bosses with, like, Necro armor. And then just make hollowed armor. Maybe I would get, like, Palladium or Cobalt if, I had a bunch of it lying around. But, like, I'm not going to spend the time mining for Mithril and Orichalcum if I'm just playing casually and don't need to. But if I'm doing something difficult, where I really want, like, the increased damage or the increased defense of those higher armor sets, then I'm going to just, go for the best one I can get, which is going to be, like... makes Mithril and Orichalcum kind of pointless. Maybe in multiplayer, if I had a bunch of the mid-tier ores, I might make them, but in general, I'm not really big on making those armor sets to begin with. It's a lot of mining. You can mix Summoner and Mage with Forbidden Armor. You can, but... you could also just play them pure. Palladium? I'm not positive. It's been a minute since I've looked at the pronunciation of it. Okay, well, I'm gonna pause here, as soon as I do one more cycle. We've done about 10,000 damage this stream. I will probably stream again in a couple hours. I'm not sure if I'm going to do 10,000 damage, but hopefully we can at least get some done. 6, 5, and 46, 8, 6, 9. Alright, bye everyone.